Hello, I'm Anthony. Today I want to talk about this piece of music that I'm writing. It's called Descent, and that's going to be, as you'll see, an important theme in what we're going to talk about today. Now, most of the content on my channel is tutorial videos discussing how to perform a particular operation or to achieve a particular goal. But I also take great pains as regularly as possible to say, none of this matters if you're not writing music. That's the important thing to me, and all of the technical skills are all about getting to that end goal. The reason I mention that is because this piece of music arose out of a very abstract technical idea. I wanted to have an ever-descending scale, and we're going to talk about, they're called Shepard Scales. We're going to talk about that concept today, but in a very particular context, the idea of writing a piece of music around this weird idea. So this is where it all started. This Hallian preset, it's called Distorted Intro. It's a Skylab macro. It sounds wonderful. It sounds like this. So I was kind of browsing around presets looking for inspiration, came across this sound, happened to press a G sharp, and then I kind of slipped down onto the G and thought, oh, that sounds really good. Over the course of the next few minutes, I basically just carried on going down the keyboard, and every time I played the next note, I had no inclination to go back up. A few minutes later, I decided which notes I wanted to play. As I kept going down the keyboard, it turned out that over about 2 octaves, I had the sweet spot for this preset. Above, it sounded a bit too bright, and below, you lose the frequencies and you can't really hear it. So I had a 2-octave usable range, but this idea had occurred to me that I didn't ever want to go back up. I just wanted to have the thing going down constantly. Now, I was already aware of the concept of Shepard tones. They appear quite regularly in a lot of the music that I love listening to. I'm going to demonstrate a Shepard scale in an abstract concept. I'm going to close this project down and open up a new one. Here's the Shepard scale in its pure form. Just goes up forever. There are some very famous examples of this scale being used. There's one at the end of Echoes by Pink Floyd. It's just this tone that constantly goes up. Happens at the beginning and end of Day at the Races by Queen. You get this da 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 da, and it breaks into Tie Your Mother Down, and it's amazing. But that ascending scale is a Shepard scale. There's one in I Am the Walrus by the Beatles at the end of that song. Again, this tone that just seems to rise forever. So it's been known about in popular music for many years, and you hear these things and it kind of catches your ear. And it's an auditory illusion. What we've done is we've created 2 chromatic scales separated by an octave. So the first scale from C1 to B1 gets ever louder, and the second scale from C2 to B2 gets ever quieter. And what basically happens is that these notes pass responsibility from each other to give the illusion of always going up. So if you look at the first scale, for instance, it gets louder and louder as the notes rise in pitch. But when we jump from B1 to C1, we've obviously got to jump down an entire octave. So we want to de-emphasize that leap as much as possible. And that's what's accomplished by the reduction in volume. The C1 is very quiet, so you can hardly hear it. So the B1 is the kind of dominant partner in that note pair. As scale number 1 gets from B1, the next note wants to be C2. C2 is the dominant note of this scale, and so scale number 2 picks up the responsibility for playing that next note. But from that point onwards, it's kind of got to get out of the way, because by the time it gets to the end of its scale, it's going to have a similar kind of problem. It's going to be jumping from B2 down an octave. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do that by scale number 1. Because it's constantly drawing your attention to the next note, which is louder and higher than the previous one. And the combination of these 2 scales working together, with the volumes kind of meeting halfway and then blurring the division in between them, generates this illusion of an ever-increasing scale. So that's the Shepard scale in abstract. That's the kind of the concept. But I want to put this in a musical context, so I need to take this somewhere else. Let's have a look at the next example. So what I've done in this example is I've stepped away from the technical kind of perfection of the Shepard scale now, I'm starting to try to find a way to evolve it to actually be usable in a musical context. What I've got is basically 6 ascending scales, still separated, still going up over the octave. They're all going from C2 up to B2 in this case. What I've done this time is I've drawn the attention to the ascending nature of the notes in a different way. So I've got these 6 scales, as I say, and as you can see, they're always getting louder, but they're getting louder up to a different maximum point. And over the course of the 6 scales, you see the responsibility for playing the loudest note is constantly being passed from one scale to the next. Let's have a listen to these 6 scales, see what this sounds like. It's not as technically pure as the original one, but it is kind of working. By messing around with the velocities of the various notes, you can kind of get it a little bit. I drew these in manually, and there's no technical perfection to this at all. But really what I'm doing here is I'm trying to get to the stage where I've got this idea of using multiple different sounds to create the same illusion, but now I'm not using ascending and descending scales. I've got something that's more workable. All 6 of these scales are constantly getting louder up to a different maximum point. And it's the fact that I've got lots of them spread out, kind of dividing that labour, that's actually doing the job. Now, it makes it even easier to accomplish this illusion if you then reintroduce the concept of frequency split, because all 6 of these scales are currently all playing the same notes. So let's have a look at the frequency split idea. Not much more of the dry theory to go. We're going to jump back to descent in a moment. So this is the last example I'm going to give you of a kind of dry mathematical idea. All I've done here is split these sounds across octaves. See what this sounds like. That's much more effective than example number 2. So now I've got something. I know that if I spread the frequency division between different synths, and over the course of a long sequence, I subdivide the velocity responsibility as well, so that they're all maxing out at different points, I've got half a chance of being able to put this in some sort of working musical context. Let's jump back to descent. So here's the entire piece of music. We've got a fade out starting at about 8 minutes. But this is 8 minutes of essentially constantly descending scale. And I'm using those ideas that I showed you in abstract in order to accomplish this. So let's go back to the example of just the distorted intro on its own. So this was the original synthesizer sound that I had. If I have it just going down, this is the lowest 2 notes that this sound plays. So this E1 is kind of the functionally lowest sound I want to hear. From that point onwards, I thought it became a little bit blurred, and I wanted to jump back up to its kind of 2-octave usable range. But what I now need to do is jump all the way back up to the top of its scale, which is D#3. Well, that's a hell of a way to leap. If I do that all on its own, it's going to be super obvious that I've jumped up. And here we come up to a very quiet D#3. So here's the idea of this jump is the thing that I don't want you to hear. So I'm going to use all of the other sounds to mask it. Now I'm going to bring in all 8 sounds of what I've called the Shepard bus, and we'll listen to that transition. Try to see if you can hear this jump up to D#3. It doesn't matter where in this piece of music I pick. I'll pick 2 random bar sections over here. So we're moving 4 bar chunks. Every 4 bars we go down to the next note. Let's listen to these 2, see if you can find which of the 8 sounds is actually transitioning up. Actually an arpeggio. This arpeggio that's running in the background, let's listen to it on its own. Just have a little section of it. But you can't hear those higher pitch notes. So there's the highest note, D sharp 4, and over the course of the next 4 times 8, so it's a 32 bar kind of passage. We're going to go down from bar 109, where we're up at D sharp 4, and we're going to finish our journey at bar 141, 32 bars later, where the highest note at that point is a D sharp 2. So what I've effectively got is an 8-minute long, or well, infinitely long, but this thing happens to be about 8 minutes long, where over the entire piece, it just drags you deeper and deeper down into this abyss. At that point, it's my responsibility to try to find melodies that are sympathetic with that idea. Now, I was just going to show you this melody, and I've noticed as I opened the instrument that it's misnamed. Initially, it was written on a Hallian, but it's now changed to a mini Moog. So this is a preset from the Moog. This is the sound that's going to be generating this melody. And can you see what's going on with the melody? It always goes down. So let's have a listen to this. It's a bit violent, this Moog sound. Brace yourself, here we go. Step down. Now with a melody, don't quite have the luxury of being able to go forever. So I have small melodies that do their job and then get out of the way. So from that point onwards, I'm going to have 16 bars of silence. Actually, that's the last time that you'll hear that sound. But after it's done its thing, a palette cleanser comes in, a different sound to take your emphasis away from this. You're not thinking about it anymore. When it comes back in, it can start at the top of its tree again and begin its descent. So basically every melodic idea in this piece of music goes down. And when you add all of that stuff up together, it's really important not to get kind of too carried away from the technical perspective. It was a cool idea and I really enjoyed doing it, but I never sacrificed musicality on the altar of that idea. You know, everything had to serve the song. It's always about serving the song. So I thought that was a really interesting kind of perspective to have on songwriting. This isn't something I've ever attempted before, to take something as technical as a Shepard scale, which is a purely abstract notion, and make something genuinely melodic out of it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please hit like if you did. I'll see you next time. Thanks very much.